Hey everyone, this is Marathon Money Inside the Ticker, and you guys know any well requested Wes coming from Applied Digital, and I'm happy he's back on because a lot of things has happened since the last time he came on with the economy, with AI, and kind of like my first question: how is it going in general?
Thanks for having me again, Kenny. I appreciate it. It's going great. Just busy as we can possibly be. Uh, Demand is great for us, which is always a plus. And we broke ground on a new site in the southern part of the U.S., which is new for us. And so we've done everything in North Dakota. We're working on several more campuses as well. So we're just continuing to expand. Working on customer contracts, building out the sites, turning them on. That last part is really the key. I think for 2026 is just making sure that we meet the deadlines we're supposed to meet for our customers from a building and turn on perspective. And we're feeling really good about that right now.
Man, that makes me feel good. I think it makes a lot of people feel good because one of the questions I got to that is like a must ask question. With you getting other customers to basically lease from you guys. Core was a very kind of more of your like biggest customer that you guys have in your basically your list. Now you guys are expanding more, so that kind of makes people feel comfortable as me as well. So I guess the question is, you do have competitors and customers like they're like co-opposition that who also lease from you. So when they don't lease from you anymore, what is the angle here? What is the move? Because you do have those customers that like Core Weaver uh,
Yep.
is a large customer of yours, but also a potential competitor.
Yeah. So they are in some aspects. So one of the things that we have announced, and we've talked about this really for the last year. So the competitive piece is we have a cloud business that owns GPUs, sells GPU capacity. We announced, I think it was last April, that we were seeking alternatives for that. We've now announced at the end of December that we're going to spin that into its own separate company, and that really creates that separation. To over time remove that part of our business that's competitive for the applied digital data center part of the business that looks competitive to some of our potential customers or our customers. So we have a really clear path to spin that, let it grow on its own. That business, I think has a lot of potential as well, and there's a lot of growth out there in the cloud angle side of the business where you actually own the hardware. So excited about that part of the business and expect that to grow rapidly as well. Spinning it out creates that separation from Applied Digital, even though we'll be the majority owner over time. Through various methods, we will not be, but it will create a lot of value, I think, for our shareholders. But it allows that business to stand alone, have its own capital stack, have it be able to raise capital on its own, to go out and deploy a lot more equipment and get new customers as well, because both of those markets are very robust. And the way we go after those markets with the Applied Digital business and now what we call the Chronoscale business, it's a different approach, typically different, can be different end customers. And then from an investor perspective, if you want to own data centers specifically, you can own Applied Digital. And if you want to own, cloud compute, neo cloud style business, you can own Chronoscale. And it separates really those two. And they both have their own sets of positives and negatives, growth dynamics and risk factors that come along with it. But I think it's a great move for us and a great way to create additional shareholder value by spinning that into its own company.
Man, I love the diversification. I'm always big on it, but I do want you to elaborate before we kind of move on. What is Chronoscale, and then how intricate is it to apply digital, like
So
going for the
Chronoscale,
future?
yeah. So Chronoscale is what we previously called Applied Digital Cloud. It looks like a smaller version of Nebius or of CoreWeaver, of Lambda. And then if you look at like Iron that's in the market, they have that business, but they're also vertically integrated. That's a model they're going after, which is vertically integrated data center and compute. So when you look back to Applied Digital, you have the data center, which is Applied Digital, and then you have a neo cloud business, like I said, that is more of a Nebius or a CoreWeave or that type of a business that goes out and gets customers that want actual GPU capacity. Could Chronoscale be a customer of Applied Digital in the future as a tenant for one of our data centers? Sure. But right now, Applied Digital is really focused on, what we refer to as 6 hyperscalers for what we're looking for to grow our customer list. So that 6, as a reminder, is Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon, Oracle, and CoreWeave. And so we have 2 of those 6. And the goal at Applied Digital is just continue to add to that list, over the next year and next 2 years, and hopefully fill that list out to all 6 of those customers over time.
Okay, I actually understand that part of the business. I'm still learning more about Chronoscale as you guys move forward. But I do like to call this little segment base electron power gamble.
Sure.
I know you guys chose to become a power generation company through Base Electron rather than signal long-term PPA with utilities. Why is that, and what value you think that would bring to the shareholders, or does that really expand your operation or make you guys better?
Sure. So let me explain what these are. So Base Electron is a newly formed company. Applied Digital owns 10% of Base Electron. Base Electron is what we call an independent power producer, an IPP. And what Base Electron is doing is going to build power generation initially in the state of North Dakota. And this, Kenny, it's really just forward looking. So what we're doing right now is utility power, and we'll continue to do utility power. But what I see from a demand perspective is what I think is so large into the future, that when I look out to 2028, 2029, and into the 2030s, we need to make sure more electrons get added to the grid, more power gets generated, so that we can continue to expand our campuses in the region. So in North Dakota, could go into other places in the country, and this is a way for us to control more of that power generation build out, more aggressive in how we want to build that without the risk going to Applied Digital shareholders. So we didn't do that inside of Applied Digital. So if you look across kind of the portfolio, you have data center. That's Applied Digital. What you should always expect from us at Applied Digital is building data center campuses, long-term leases with high-quality tenants. The leases we've signed so far are 15 years with extensions that can be added onto it. So you should expect more of those style of leases from Applied Digital, and that's what you're going to always get from Applied Digital. More leases, more data center campuses, and that's how we're going to continue to grow. And then if you look at Chronoscale, that's the cloud business, and you can sign what we call long-term contracts there, but they're not nearly as long as we get on the data center business. So long-term contract on a cloud business, 3 to 5 years. So that, revenue could grow really quickly. The risks you deal with are more around technology obsolescence of GPUs or TPUs or whatever the cloud business owns and sells as its service. And then the third component here now is power generation. So Base Electron will develop power generation in the region. The goal will be it will work with the utilities, put the power generation on the grid. It will feed Applied Digital campuses, but be put in the most optimized places on the grid to feed both our campuses, but also benefit the grid at large. And what we see from this is just the need for more power generation, in the United States, but we're specifically focused on areas where we're building data centers. And then Applied Digital, as shareholders, get to participate in that through ownership of Base Electron, but don't take the risk associated with building power generation, owning those assets, and the longevity and the operation, and they get some of the upside participation through ownership. But then Base Electron gets once again to go and have a different capital stack, different investors that put money into that company to grow it up without dilution to Applied Digital. Again, Applied Digital just participate through its 10% ownership, but grow that up, and then really allow Applied Digital to continue to expand beyond the utility power that we have. We're going to build utility power in North Dakota this year, next year, 2028. Then we add more power into the grid so that we can continue to expand those campuses beyond what the generation capacity is in the state right now. So it's really, Kenny, when you look at Base Electron, it's our way of controlling the power generation build out for the future, making sure that that happens so that we can continue to expand our data center campuses. But it's looking out into, like I said, 28, 29 and beyond, when we're going to need that additional power generation to come online. Right now we have enough grid power that exists already to continue to build, for the next 3 years. But if you're going to do power generation, you have to start planning well in advance of that and have those assets come online when we need it in 29 and 30.
No, because I completely understand what you're saying. And with the Base Electron, a lot of it won't be operational to like later half of 2028. Is that still the case?
That's the case, yeah.
Yeah.
It's starting the process. We started this process 6 months ago. It takes a lot of planning. The company was formed officially back in December. But it's the company's working through, permitting, lands, really sites for generation build, partnerships with utilities, all of the things that we'll need. We have a purchase that we've made with Babcock and Wilcox, which is a steam turbine on nat gas. That's going to deliver much earlier than traditional nat gas turbines, which is exciting. And then when you look at that evolution over time, it's not the most efficient solution. So when you're looking at kind of the puzzle pieces of what you can do from a power generation, if you're looking at nat gas right now, you could do Bloom. Bloom's a great solution near term. The primary issue with Bloom is twofold. It's very expensive versus traditional nat gas turbines. It's about double the price. And then we don't really know the longevity when it's used as primary power generation. But a great solution for many, many other aspects. And then you look at traditional gas turbines, the go-to. The issue with traditional gas turbines is if you get in line now, you're getting delivery in 2032 or 2033. So it's a pretty long lead time to get the traditional gas turbines. And then what we have is a gas boiler, so a steam boiler turbine, a steam turbine. Really probably the most proven, method for generating electricity in the world. Most electricity is still generated by boiling water. It's just what source do you boil water from? And so this is, in this instance, nat gas. And we can get delivery in 28. It's at a great price. So about less than half of kind of what it would cost to do Bloom. But we get that delivery timeline. We have a solution that we know is going to last 30 plus years. And then if you take the next step beyond that, the most efficient way to generate electricity with nat gas is what you could call a combined cycle gas turbine. And so there's simple cycle and then combined cycle on gas turbines. So simple cycle, you're just running a gas turbine. Combined cycle, you do a gas turbine and then you pair it with a steam turbine. And so you take the heat off the gas turbine, run it in the steam turbine, and that's the most efficient way to generate electricity off of nat gas. So we have the steam portion of that'll come early. And then later we'll be able to add in the gas turbine to create additional power generation, plus create super high efficiency on the locations in which we build. So it's a way of going, okay, this is a very proven generation methodology, and we can get the steam turbines now, and then we can get the gas turbines later and make it super efficient over time. But it all feeds into how can we scale our campuses in these regions beyond 2028. That's really what the focus is.
So I do have to ask a question about the natural gas. You spoke on that, but with natural gas commodities, the world is kind of moving to, decarbonization. Like, can you talk about, because it seems like you're kind of betting on that for the future. But I know you said you took yourself off that risk by not putting on Applied Digital invested shareholders, but on Base Electron Power.
Yeah. So when you look at power generation over the near term, let's even call it medium term. Eventually, we have to get to nuclear power generation. it's just not going to come in the time frame that we needed, and kind of the AI landscape at large needs it. So the solution for that right now is going to be nat gas. We happen to be, most of our sites located in North Dakota. And North Dakota, to me, is, it's a cold version of Texas. We have the Bakken field. There's a lot of trapped natural gas in the Bakken field that they're flaring, so it's getting burned anyways. And we're able to take that because we're working with the utility there that's building a new pipeline from the Bakken to the east, so it goes all the way to Fargo. And we'll have points along that line in which we deploy power generation. So it's burning gas in a way that generates electricity with gas that's being burned to do, for the most part, nothing at this point. So when you look at the next 5 to 7 years, it has to be a lot of natural gas generation. Some renewables will be sprinkled in. We'll do some of that as well. You need to do battery banks with that to make it to get the efficiency, to get the load over 24 hours, or get the power over 24 hours versus just when the sun shines or when the wind blows. So there's going to be a mix of what happens, and then on the way to doing nuclear. And we're not going to start talking about what base electron or applied digital will do in nuclear. We've been working on that for the past year, but it's a little premature to talk about that. But nat gas is going to be the majority of what the industry leans on for this midterm power. There's just, in my opinion, no other solution. And we have loads of excess nat gas, especially in North Dakota, that's being flared every single day.
And so I agree with you that I do think stuff like that is going to take a lot longer. I do truly believe that. I do have to ask the question, what, in your opinion, do you think like 2040, 2050? Because that's my thought, when we'll really move over to decarbonation, and that gives you like a major 20, 30-year window.
Yep. So in a big way, we're going to start to see it, in my opinion, we'll start to see it at smaller scale before, but you need these to kind of operate for a little while, right, before you're going to go big. And you're still looking at all the different flavors. There's so much going on in nuclear between SMRs and large scale. And I think you're going to see a mix of all of those. It's just going to take a significant amount of time. And then you start to also deal with, we've all seen it, and I deal with it all the time. We're having a hard enough time now getting new data center sites permitted, right? People don't want, it's like a NIMBY, not in my backyard. And then also just there's a lot of misinformation about data centers in the market. And so you're seeing a lot of pushback on this. If you're seeing pushback on this, imagine the amount of pushback you're going to get when you're trying to site a new nuclear reactor. So we're going to have to work through all of these things, and it's going to take a significant amount of time. What we see is our ability to do nat gas generation, in the next 5 to 7 years in North Dakota, and use that excess nat gas out of the Bakken, and then we'll be planning for what comes next. But I agree with you that we're probably in mid 2030 to late 2030 or even 2040 before we see meaningful deployment of nuclear generation.
Okay. I do have to ask about execution risk. Now, you have Polaris Forge 1, Polaris Forge 2, Delta Forge 1, and then base electron power facilities. What is your maximum comfortability of built velocity in megawatts per quarter?
Yeah.
So quality and safety become a substantial concern.
So what we have done with the company as we've matured, and when we were, we've done a lot of things that put us in the great place that we're in right now. And so, last year we were really focused on signing our first customer at Polaris Forge 1. And, to the outside world, it looked like that was everything. Like that's all anyone really cared about. And that's what they were looking at. While that was happening, we had secured a large amount of supply chain for MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. That's benefiting us in a big way now. We were working on how do we scale across multiple sites from a construction perspective at the same time. And then what we've landed on is what we call a franchise model inside of the company. And so we can just replicate what we're doing at Polaris Forge 1, at Polaris Forge 2, at Delta Forge 1. We put the individual sites have their own team in place, and then we have all of our experience setting inside the company that manages these teams. And so we get, a site manager on site, and then we have a GC that works there, and so we can continue to replicate that across multiple sites. Right now, I've been given the go ahead from the team that we could scale that up to likely 7 sites at the same time. Right, we're working on our contract for our 3rd and our 4th and our 5th site, but I think that's where right now we feel comfortable being able to go to is as large as 7 different sites. Now, I think this is important, Kenny, is what we have looked at from a construction, a scalability perspective for our company. We think it's difficult for us to do more than 2 buildings on a site. So what you see on these sites is we're typically doing 300 megawatts critical IT load. That's 2 of our buildings. They're 150 each. We think if we try to go beyond that on a single site, you see a significant degradation in efficiency. And so we haven't signed up to, these mega sites, like a 1 gigawatt build over, say, 2.5 or 3 years. I think that's really difficult. We think that's really difficult. So what you'll see is we can scale up to building a gigawatt simultaneously. We have, I think, 900 megawatts under construction currently, and that'll grow this year. But we can do that across multiple sites. So if I'm 900 megawatts, I'm doing it at 3 sites. If I go to 1.2 gigawatts, right, that's on 4 sites, 300 megawatts each site. So it gives you kind of the math equation of what we think theoretically we can go to construction at the same time. And then we deal with, our supply chain. We have to make sure that our supply chain for our MEP is in place to be able to support that amount of construction. We have that now. We might need to make it bigger, but we've done a good job locking that in place with some of our key suppliers. It was 18 months plus ago. We actually bought out capacity of factories for key components. We bought the capacity out for multiple years so that we made sure that we had that supply chain locked in, and we'll be able to continue to execute. But I think that's where we are. I think we could go up to 7. It's a little early to talk about that. We need to sign. We've started building 3. We need to sign the customer for 3. We need to do 4. We need to do 5. And so, but that I'm just kind of giving a framework of where we think that theoretical max is right now.
We're talking, you're talking about 3, 4, or 5 that you need to sign with the customer. Are you worried about like construction labor shortage, supply chains delay, or structural right now? As you grow and do more, because before you was doing Polaris Forge 1, and that came on time, and then now you have things going on simultaneously.
Yep.
And so what would you have a worry about that with the way the world's moving?
Absolutely. We think about this all the time. So what you'll see is for us to continue to build in locations where I feel like we have an advantage, right? In more unique locations. So we in North Dakota right now, we're building 2 campuses there. What does that do for me? It allows me to attract and retain the labor force, and there's great labor force in North Dakota. And they did big construction out in the Bakken. It's a lot of similar skill sets, and so we're able to attract and retain that labor force locally in North Dakota. We're not competing against 2, 3, 10, 20 other projects like people are competing in, like West Texas, for example. There's so many projects going on in West Texas. I've heard a lot of talk about, flyers from one data center campus being placed on the windshields of workers at another data center campus, trying to attract them over. I guarantee if you go to almost any rest stop in West Texas, there's flyers on the wall in the bathroom and outside that are saying, we'll give you this sign-on bonus and 5% pay raise if you'll come and join us. So there's a fight for labor in some of these places where there's just a huge amount of different projects going on with different companies. I don't have that in North Dakota. We think in North Dakota we can go to likely 4 campuses with the labor force that's in the state at the same time. So we think we're in a great place, and you'll see us do that at other sites that we're working on, where we feel like we have a good advantage and we can attract that and retain, not just attract, but retain that labor force, because it's becoming a huge issue in the industry. So we've strategically picked these locations where we're one of the few, if not the only, builder in the area, so that we don't have to have that fight constantly.
Yeah, well, I'm itching, man. I'm itching to ask you the question as like, the criteria that you built to be able to find these locations where you have a leverage with the workers, where you don't have to fight or give away percentage or do more than you have to. I know competitors might watch this. I don't want to give that away for you, but I do wonder how you figured that out, because that is a main concern. Because I know a lot of companies, they have to do the 5%, or hey, if you sign on, I give you a signing bonus.
Yep.
If that's something you have to do, that's money you're not taking off the balance sheets. I do want to ask you a couple questions about land and real estate. You control over 900 acres of Polaris Forest 2 alone. The land value isn't fully reflected on your financials. How do you think about that option value of that land if AI infrastructure demand exceeded even your projections?
I mean, the land bank is much more valuable as we do, construction, anything, that 900 acres is so much more valuable now that we're doing construction on it, right? The accounting mechanism is you don't ever write those up, right? Unless there's a transaction, which, don't expect a transaction there. So, when we buy this land, we improve the value dramatically just as we start to build on it, and as we have a customer for it. And then any land beside it that we typically control, is worth significantly more. So we do have a significant amount of value in these assets. But I mean, Kenny, just to walk through our business model, when you look at these assets, the asset is worth the cost of what we build it for. Just say it's the cost. But as soon as it's contracted, it's worth 3 times the cost. Like if you went to resell that, it's worth maybe 2.5 or 3 times, depending on who the customer is, right? It dramatically increases, because then you have a cash flow stream out of that. And that's really what the business is that we're in. It's what I call highly technical real estate development. And so take raw land, build the building, and then the keys, you get the customer, and then that contract makes everything significantly more valuable. And that's really the value that we create for our shareholders. But I do, Kenny, want to jump back on from the labor just for a second. We do a lot on the labor side to make sure that we retain people on site, right? It's not just about they don't have anywhere else to go. I've personally spent time going through curating menus from the catering that we have on site, right? To make sure that everyone has a great experience on site. You're doing construction. It's a tough job, especially in the winter in North Dakota. But we do a lot of things on site to make sure that we retain people, not just assume that we're going to have them, because people are still mobile, right? They could say, you know what, I don't want to be in North Dakota in the winter. I could go to Texas and work in the winter, through the winter in Texas, and they're paying well down there. But we do a good job of retaining and keeping people there in a lot of ways, versus just being the only game in town. That does help, though.
Yeah, it does help. I know you have way more criteria than that. It's just it always interests me when somebody figures out an advantage to make, people want to work with them. People want to stay. People want to be part of a company. And then, as an investor, that looks phenomenal when people want to be at your company.
Absolutely.
Because that means you're doing something right. I do want to ask you, what do you think about, government stepping into AI? Are you doing anything with government work?
Yeah, we spend most of our time locally and at the state level, because that's where the most impactful to us right now. We watch, the regulatory framework. I mean, government's going to be involved, right? It's a massive industry. It's going to be an even bigger industry, and so you're going to see more regulations come in, more oversight. Kind of the Wild West days are going away. We think we're in a really good place from a compliance perspective. Kenny, I talk inside the company a lot about doing things the right way. So I think we're in a good position in the way we operate now. to be compliant with whatever comes out in the future. And there could be, some curveballs, but we work really hard to make sure that we are great stewards of resources. We were really a pioneer in closed loop waterless cooling. We work really closely with our communities. We do everything, like I said, the right way. I mean, I'm sure, my parents always told me you do it the right way, and I'm sure yours did too. But that's the way I grew up, and it's just a good thing for us to follow. And I think that'll help us as we start to deal with more and more regulations from a government perspective, that will already be ahead of what will need to be done. We'll already be doing what needs to be done.
I really appreciate you coming on. I do have one more question. It's more that 10 years from now, when you got customers, you got a lot of customers coming in, it's Applied Digital going to be a pure play data center, or is it something that we can even categorize yet? Because you are looking to invest in different areas.
Yeah,
You're diversified.
we're adding the pieces that we think we need to scale to the size that we think is possible, right? So we're trying to think years into the future. What are we going to need? Not just wait until 29 shows up and we go, boy, there's no more power in North Dakota, right? So we're thinking through that as far in advance as we can. So we're doing all those things, but I think that, if like my vision, I think we talked about this last time, my vision of Applied Digital is, okay, I have pretty good line of sight on 5 campuses. Those 5 campuses can go to at least 1 gigawatt each, right? So that gives me a good line of sight over the next 5 to 8 years of how does Applied Digital get to 5 gigawatts of data centers deployed. And right now it looks like to me it'll be a pure play. We're adding these other pieces in where Applied Digital shareholders get upside without risk, and we need to go and do these things to make Applied Digital grow bigger. So we're trying to do them in a really smart and thoughtful way. But I see such big upside for the company, and just the demand we're seeing obviously is really robust. But one of the, I get a look at a lot of different angles of this business, and because we have that cloud business and we're running GPUs, and we have GPUs that we've been running for 3 years, we've seen the meaningful price increase on GPUs. If you're quoting out new, even the H100s, right? H100s, 3-year-old hardware. Over the last 3-4 months, we've seen meaningful price increase on the hourly rate on GPUs because the compute demands are so high. And I've watched this. We're going to see so many ups and downs this year. We watch it so much in the AI landscape and kind of hyperventilating that goes on around it. But we went from, every question on every interview I did was, what do you think about a bubble, a bubble, a bubble, a bubble? That was everything. And we've gone from that in kind of October, November of last year to, I don't really get asked that anymore because we're seeing all the compute demands with agentic AI. And now the whole thing has turned to, what industry is AI going to crush next, right? What jobs are they going to replace? It's just moved so fast. And so when my view of the world is, if we look a few years out, almost everything that we touch, a big part of the cost or the production, the means of production component is going to be compute. So how do we at Applied Digital enable large scale compute deployment to feed what's coming? And then we do that by data center builds, right? And we're going to just continue to scale our data center builds. And then Chronoscale, our cloud unit, is going to do that by deploying massive amounts of GPUs. And then Base Electron is going to do its part by building power generation so we can continue to scale data center capacity. Chronoscale can continue to scale GPU capacity. But if I just look right now into the future, it's just a race that's heated up dramatically on infrastructure builds and deployment of compute. And I just don't see that slowing down anytime soon. We've only seen that heat up significantly over the past 4 months, and you just see the adoption rate of everything, and usually the gap, by the way, historically, the gap between consumer adoption, every big tech revolution is historically consumer led, and then later enterprise and business comes into it and they have their applications. But but the gap has shrunk so much. You're already seeing it on the enterprise side. We see that, Anthropic has been dominant there so far, but you're seeing that on the enterprise side on coding. And so that gap of, 3 years that you're really seeing, maybe not quite that much of a gap. It's just so small. You're seeing such an acceleration on enterprise, and consumer continues to accelerate all at the same time. So we're just trying to keep up. It's an exciting time.
It is a very exciting time. Before we get off, I do have to ask a question. How many investment grade hyperscaler customers are actually out there in the world that, is an anchor campus tenant that you have for Polaris Forge?
Yeah,
So
so
how many do you think is out there?
there's really, so we focus on 6, and 5 of those 6 are what technically are investment grade, right? So CoreWeave is not. Hopefully CoreWeave gets to investment grade over the next few years, so that'll create another. There's other ones that are out there, like if you look, and it's just a question of can you build for those customers, right? So the investment grade hyperscalers, it is Microsoft, it's Amazon, Google, Oracle, Meta, right? Those are the ones. Apple used to be more in that, and maybe they'll come back into that as well if they need a significant amount of capacity. And then you have, you step down and you see CoreWeave, and you see Nebius, and you see others that are in that group. There's some, enterprise that's going to come in. It hasn't been huge yet. You have companies like, ByteDance and some other Chinese companies that are trying to get some data center capacity in the U.S. High quality companies, but not technically investment grade. So it's really those 5 that we're focused on adding more of them to our customer roster and diversifying and growing the business.
Guys, I appreciate you, Wes, coming on the show again. I hope in about 6 months' time we can do this again and catch up with the company. You're doing a phenomenal job, in my opinion. I think you are. I think 10 years out. That's how I think. If somebody's thinking 10 years out, they're usually in a great spot.
Yep,
in my opinion. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and this will be out soon. Peace.